Hi,
Hello, how
Jack.
are you
How's it
doing?
going?
Yeah, good, thank you. How are you?
Right. Yeah, good, thank you. We're just going to have a bit of a chat about becoming an established artist. So I
Hmm.
hope that's not too flattering, Jack. Um,
Yeah, I don't
so
know.
just start us off by just telling us a bit about Grade Two as a band. Tell us a bit about kind of the background and the kind of basis of the journey that you guys have been on.
Yeah, okay. So I'm in a band called Grade Two. We are a punk band from the Isle of Wight. We're all from Ryde. We all met in school. We formed when we were very young. Round, I was only 14 when we started. The others were 15. And we kind of just started gigging around, mainly around the island at first, and then we kind of quite quickly got noticed somehow in Germany, and we started playing a lot in Europe. And then it sort of things kind of snowballed from there. And next thing we know, we get a record label deal and ended up touring America, and until COVID hit, which is
Right.
yeah.
So, um, so how did you? That's quite a quick version of events. So how did you
Yeah.
kind of first like get off the island, start playing? You know, how did you get that jump to playing in Europe?
Yeah, that was the weirdest time because I think we had quite an advantage because we were quite young. We were only so young at the time. Our music was quite a niche sort of scene. It was like it wasn't just punk, but we played like oi music, like street punk, which is more like the skinhead scene. And our lead singer Sid is very sort of, he's got a bit of, he's got connections in that area. So he did well to sort of like get us known in the scene, via Facebook, and his dad's a skinhead as well, so he kind of like has a lot of connections. And I think, yeah, it was mainly just through Facebook, our Facebook page. We got a lot of people from across in Europe that noticed us, and said, we'd get talking to people online. And next thing you know, we managed to get a couple gigs over. I think the first one was in France, and it developed from there. We recorded a little demo, and this little record label, in an independent record label in Germany called Contra Records, they found it and they really liked it. They thought it was like this kind of like, this old school punk sound, which we kind of weren't even trying to do. Do you know what I mean? We didn't even know what kind of sound we were trying to go for. It was a very rough, like, we've never even written a song kind of demo, like. And so they just really took a liking to that because it was so sort of rough and like, and amateurish. Do you know what I mean? I think they kind of like that.
Right. And how so they kind of so they've heard your song online, I'm guessing. And then
Yeah.
did they approach you, and what did that process look like? What did they kind of say to you?
Yeah, so we put it on. I think we just put it on SoundCloud originally. It wasn't even a proper release or anything, and we posted it on Facebook. And yeah, they reached out to us, really liking it, and said, "Do you want to join our label?" And we were like, I think 16 at the time, maybe even 15, and we were just like, "What the hell?" Like, we don't even know what to do here. Like, we didn't expect this at all, but obviously we took it, which was pretty exciting for us at the time. We were, like little school kids, like, wow, we got a label already. Check, like, it's mad. Um, but and then yeah, we went on to release an EP with those guys pretty soon afterwards. You know, while we were still only about 16, so that was our first release with them, which did all right actually. Managed to get us out in Europe a bit more.
Right, so that must have been a pretty big leap for you, suddenly playing in Europe.
Mm.
Do you have any kind of advice around playing in front of new crowds? That obviously quite a different scene to who you might play in front of on the Isle of Wight.
Yeah, so I mean, the main audience we get away from the OI, sort of mainland Europe, would be, middle-aged skinheads. I quite like playing to people my age. Usually that was my ideal audience, but unfortunately we get our scene is just, it's a lot of old guys because they're all sort of reliving the 80s, like oi oi, like let's trying to just relive their glory days. But no, there is a younger scene, but yeah, I think we found that playing away is sort of big tattooed skinheads, that kind of thing. And there are, you can get some quite great gigs out of that because these guys loved, mosh pit and will do all sorts, so it can be quite lively gigs, which is great.
Yeah, definitely. Did you find that you kind of like picked it up quite quickly, kind of the touring life and things like that, or did it take a lot of kind of adjusting to?
um Yeah, I mean, we got quite used to it. At first, it wasn't so much touring, but it was more like weekend shows. So when we first started, when we were still kind of young, you know, people would say, "Oh, you're going off on tour again?" We're like, "Well, actually, we're flying to Berlin, playing a show, and then flying back hungover the next day." Like didn't really feel like proper touring. So it was great. Like couldn't fault it, but it didn't really feel like a proper tour to us. It wasn't until we started touring properly, you know, a couple of years ago, was when you really started, you know, have to get used to it. But yeah, I have got completely used to it now, and you know, I kind of miss it quite a lot since lockdown. You know, it's, you know, kind of like it's a nice life when you're out there. You don't really want to come home, and now after being home for like a whole year, I just want to leave again quite desperately, like.
Yeah, definitely. So did that kind of develop into what did that first kind of record deal kind of turn into? So it started with just an EP. Did you do anything else with them?
Yeah, so we did that EP. That was our first one, Broken Youth. And after that, we did a second EP, which I believe was more like almost an LP. It was like a mini album. It was 8 tracks. And then we did a full album with them, our first full album, which was like our stepping stone to get us to our next label now, which is how we got noticed. So that was a really great release for us with those guys. So this Contra Records label, they did a lot for us. They were really good. They were kind of like, you know, helping us grow and helping us get to that next step. And yeah, they were really, really nice guys.
So can you like share a bit about kind of what that first kind of deal was like and what new artists can expect? Maybe getting, if you know, if people are looking to get signed for the first time, obviously everyone's experience is different and it's very different label to label, but is there any kind of general advice that you'd share and what you can kind of expect from your first record deal?
Yeah, actually, I think the main experience we took away from that was actually one of the biggest mistakes we made as a band, and that was kind of assuming that everyone's your friend. It's not to say that they're not our friends as well, because we were kind of friendly with these guys, and they were nice people. But when it came down to business, they actually screwed us over a little bit, which ended up becoming quite dramatic in the end. So like when we went into it, you know, we were so young and excited. We kind of thought, oh, what could go wrong? We've got this deal. We've got records. You know, everything's great. This is really nice. Like we don't need to worry about anything. And then it became progressively clear as we went on with these guys that, you know, they weren't really paying us properly. They owed us a lot of money that we weren't getting from them, and we didn't really have anything to back it up, because we didn't sign anything when we first got with these guys. It was all like word of mouth, you know, it's a handshake agreement, and that kind of came back to bite us. So I feel like we made quite a big mistake, because we didn't really know our worth at the time. We thought they were doing us a favor. They were like, you know, they're the guys bringing us up, and in reality, we were also doing them a favor. It's a trade, isn't it? So like, I feel like we kind of let them take advantage of us a little bit. They didn't, because we were young. They kind of didn't really. I thought they think they could get away with it, and I don't know. I think it's quite important to remember that, you know, it's a two-way thing, and you are very important as well to them. It's not just they're not just doing you a favor. You know, you got to remember your own worth. And so in the end of this little drama, we ended up having to get a lawyer to give us all the rights to our music back.
Right. So I definitely recommend signing contracts and agreements at the beginning of a deal then.
Yeah, that was the main thing. We should have signed something, but I mean, because we were underage at the time, and apparently if you sign with a new label and you're under 18, you have to have a parent there present if you're signing contracts, and we didn't have that. So technically what they did was illegal. They signed an underage band without parents' blessing. So that's how we got the lawyer involved and said, give us all the rights to our songs back, because, you know, you made a mistake doing that. And then we managed to win all of our rights back, which actually turned out all right for us. But that's really that's a very unique situation, isn't it? That's not going to happen to many other people, I think, especially as I'm sure we're all over 18 in this call probably, so that's not relevant. But
just make sure you sign your contracts.
Yeah, sign your contracts and read them. yeah, I mean, if you can't read them, if you can't understand that legal mumbo jumbo, just get, just find someone who can to help you out, because it is important. Because I'm terrible at that. I don't know about you, if you've read many legal contracts and just struggle to even take in the words. Like,
Yeah. Do you think it would have been worth for you guys like having a lawyer on side from the beginning, or do you think it's not really necessary if you have the right contracts and stuff?
yeah, I think from the beginning is a bit over the top, because let's face it, lawyers are expensive. And when you're just starting out as a band, everything is just a drain. Do you know what I mean? There's no profits, you're just losing money. So like the last thing you need is like to be spending a couple £100 on this lawyer. Like, so obviously if you can afford it, then it is obviously a great idea. But we didn't wait until a bit later down the line when it was necessary. But now that we have got one, it is very useful, and I do recommend you have someone who can help you out with those things, because as much as music seems like all fun and games, there is a lot of sleaziness in the industry, I think, where you have to look out for like those contracts.
Yeah, definitely. So when you guys started, you said you kind of did like street punk or like oi music. Do you think
Yeah.
that was worth kind of tapping into the niche for that at the beginning of your career? Do you think that's kind of helped you get noticed rather than doing something maybe a lot more like of a broad genre?
Yeah, that's actually what I was going to bring up. Actually, was that's 100% a really important thing. I think that's how I think we got quite lucky in a way, where because we were so niche, it was a very small scene, it was a very tight community. So when our name came about, people people were actually interested, because I think we were this new young band from like an island nobody had heard of. We're just like, everyone's like, who are these kids? Like, and remember I said it's mainly old people, like it's kind of guys who are reliving their past. So when they see young people playing this music, they got a kick out of that. Do you know what I mean? So I think we did have a lot of things going in our favor. So yeah, that's the trouble. I think if you're in like an indie band, an indie rock band or something, like that's a very broad genre. Like it's very hard to nail down an audience, I think, with that, because you're competing with so many people. So I do think having a smaller, more niche genre does give you advantage in a way.
Yeah, definitely. One of the we spoke with the PR company, Wall of Sound PR, last week, and one of the things they said was about having a really clear idea of who your audience is, who your kind of ideal fan is. Even down to like what they wear, like where they shop, like what books they read, and things like that.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I think that can really. Would you say that really helps? Like when is that something you kind of think about when you're writing the songs? Like, do you think who's going to be listening to this? Who's gonna like enjoy this music, or do you just write the songs and then pick like what you think
Yeah,
would work?
I must admit, when it comes to writing, not so much actually. I kind of maybe at the start we would be more prone to that. Like maybe at the start would think, right, we're appealing to these guys. We were definitely just straight up oi when we started, and we kept it that way, and we did know that. But nowadays, I must admit, I'm a lot more free, I think, and I think the whole band is a lot more free with what we write about. I think we kind of, we don't want to necessarily just fit into this category. Like obviously that's our main audience, and you have to consider that, but at the same time we don't want to restrict our writing. I think it's not necessarily the best choice to on purposely write a song based on a particular audience. Like, not to say that it can't be done, but I think it's best to creatively sort of have an open mind and just try do whatever comes to mind, really, and that works best for us, I think.
Yeah, definitely. So how would you kind of say like how did that come about for you guys, like kind of developing your sound? So obviously you started with such like a niche genre, you kind of broadened your horizons a bit. You like it's you still obviously like punk music, like very
Yeah.
specifically, but it's less niche now. So how would you say that kind of like how that came about, and how did you develop that sound whilst also kind of staying true to your like audience you already
Yeah.
had?
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's an interesting thing, because we've had a lot of evolution in our sound. With every record kind of feels like it's changed slightly, and it's kind of just happened naturally. Like, we never went into the studio thinking, right, this album we're gonna develop our sound and we're gonna come out with something completely new and interesting. It kind of just happens. And I think that changes with like the time you're at in your life, you just write slightly differently, and the people you're working with, we had different people recording the album. But yeah, at first it was straight up just sort of oi, and the style was quite hard, but very simple. And I think as we sort of developed as musicians, I think we kind of developed our songwriting slightly, and the songs became less just like and more, a bit more like bit more melody, a bit more complex structures, as we sort of learned how to become a real band. I think because before, when we first started, we didn't really know what we were doing. Do you know what I mean? So that helped quite a lot, like develop our sound, I think. And the most recent album was the biggest jump, I think, in sound, because we just started working with a new producer, and he's an American producer, so we kind of had a bit more of an American punk influence. You could argue it's a bit more pop punky, some of the songs, which a lot more melodic, a lot more sort of catchy. So that's a massive change for us. With working with a new producer has changed our sound massively, I think.
Okay, so do you co-write with this new producer as well? Do you kind of write the songs together with him?
Yeah. So we came into the studio with a set of songs. We had 20 songs or so. Most of them weren't really good enough. We only had like 10 strong ones, and so we had to pick the best ones out of those lot, and then the remaining we just wrote with our producer at the studio. We just did it then and there. He's a really strong songwriter, so he kind of would just give us these ideas and we'd work with it and develop them just in the studio. And those songs ended up being some of the best ones, to be honest. So that was quite nice.
Yeah, definitely. So do you want to tell us a bit about how that came about and how you started working with your new producer now?
Yeah, so that was quite a bit of a...
It's quite a big deal, Jack, so you can.
Yeah. We got we struck gold with that one. So our new producer's a guy called Tim Armstrong, and he's the guitarist and singer of a band called Rancid, which are quite a big American punk band, which we're huge fans of. So this was a massive deal for us when we got spotted by this guy. But he didn't just find us randomly. So it came about because we met his partner or bandmate is Lars Fredriksson, who's the guitarist of Rancid as well. And so we were on tour in Germany with this very German oi band, which for some reason this American guy Lars decided to join this German oi band. I still didn't really understand why he'd done it, but he's just he doesn't speak German. All the guys in the band basically only speak German, and we're on tour with these guys, and he's just seemed very out of place. But it was a fun tour nonetheless. So we got to meet this guy on this tour, and he really got to like us, because I think what helped was that this band were German. Lars was American, we were English. We were us three and Lars were the only native English speaking people. So we managed to hit it off with Lars. We got to talk quite a lot, and he grew to like us. And we basically and he ended up, by the end of the tour, he was like, right guys, I feel like I want to manage you, and I want to show my music to Tim, show your music to Tim. And we were like, oh right, okay. Weren't expecting that at all, but yeah, sweet. If you're keen for that, we are. So he sent all of our music over to Tim, sent us some music videos, and Tim just apparently loved it, and he said he wanted to take us on board and do an album with us. So next thing we know, we fly over to America about a year later to go record an album with him in LA, and that was when we did Grave Island, our most recent album.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, I mean, I love Rancid, so that's crazy. Pardon?
You're a Rancid fan as well?
Yeah, I have to admit, only because Leo showed me and was like,
Leo
a great deal working with. But really great music. That must be a really huge thing for you guys as punk fans, definitely.
It is. It's very strange, definitely.
Yeah. So do you think? So from that, am I right in thinking you've been playing in America now as well, from being signed to their label?
Yeah, so since that started, it was just before we went to record the album. Actually, we started touring America as well. It was all sort of within that same movement, it was because since we met Lars, he had a lot of contacts for us in America who he put us in touch with, and then we managed to get over to America that same year. And then we toured America loads over the next like 2 years, which was great. That was another huge step for us to go into this new area where we've never been to and try broaden our audience a bit.
Yeah, definitely. Do you think that was like an important step for you guys, kind of like, what was it like touring in front of, you know, new audiences all the time? And do you think that helped you kind of develop as a band rather than kind of playing like hometown shows where it's like kind of local people and people, you know, your friends and people you know in the audience?
Oh yeah. It massively makes a huge difference because, you know, every night you don't know these people and you don't know if they're going to like you or not. I mean, but it's so important to just try put on your best show every night, no matter what crowd you get. Because I mean, I must admit, our first American tour wasn't great. You know, we played little pubs, you know, with like, you know, we were the headline band and we'd never been there before. You know, we play in all these cities we've never been to before, and we were headlined every show. So of course we didn't really pull an audience. You know, we were playing to pubs and bars with like 7 to 10 people a lot of the time. You know, we didn't really have much of an audience. So I mean, I think that did build us up in a way, because it was kind of rough, you know, like you know, it wasn't like Paradise. We weren't going out like, yeah, we're on tour in America, this is sweet. You know, it was a rough life. Like the gigs weren't great. We were slumming it, you know, sleeping around people's sofas. But obviously it was a great experience. And yeah, I think that really helped us sort of perform as a band, because we had to really sort of stay strong no matter what the audience was. And I think that helped us. You know, we put on a great show every night, or at least best of our ability. And yeah, that's huge. I think playing, you know, your local town does get a bit stale after a while, doesn't it? You do need to try branch out as much as you can.
Yeah, definitely. So can you kind of share a bit about like any advice to people that haven't like toured, kind of with like outside of maybe off of the Isle of Wight before and things like that? Like any advice to people maybe looking at, you know, playing their first few like not local shows, or maybe looking at booking a few like tours and things?
Yeah, I think it all does come down to networking, doesn't it? It's the most important thing, and that's the hardest thing to do, I think, at the first step where you don't know many people. But it's just really, I think it's a really important thing to just be approachable, and, you know, try be, you know, as respectful and good to people as you can, because that's how you get remembered, and that's how people remember your face and like remember your band. If you show up to a gig you've never been to before, the promoters put you on, maybe done you a favor. And, you know, if you treat the bands, the promoter, the sound guy, with a lot of respect, and, you know, you say you know, you introduce yourself, you say goodbye properly, and just, I don't know, just sort of generally don't, you know, I think a lot of bands maybe think they're a bit cool and don't and maybe don't do those little things, like, do you know what I mean? Like, I feel like there can be a lot of egos in the scene, so it's quite important to, like, you know, try not to do that when you're working with people. And, you know, that's how people respect you and remember you, because they'll want to work with you again after that, you know. And I think that's quite an important thing that helps us, is that we kind of just, we were always just there to have a bit of a good time. We never wanted to be dicks to people. We were just kind of happy to be there. And I think a lot of people noticed that. I think they kind of noticed that we were quite easy to get on with, and I think that did help quite a lot. You know, a lot of promoters kind of befriended us, and we stayed in touch with a lot of people because of that. So yeah, you know, make friends, you know, make as many friends as possible, be approachable, be a nice guy. It sounds very generic, but
Yeah, definitely. Do you have any like advice as well about kind of winning audiences over? So a lot of the time, you know, when you're doing your first tours, especially if they're support slots, not let you know, or not necessarily at headline shows or something, you know, like you said, a promoter's kind of taken a punt on you and they've put you on.
yeah.
This is kind of, so the audience watching they're not already fans of your music. So do you have any advice about like what you would do at those shows to kind of like really encourage them to go and, you know, follow you on social media, or, you know, listen to your music on Spotify? Like what do you kind of do in those situations?
I guess you have to put on a better show than the headliner, is the main trick. If you can do that, then people will remember you. I mean, that's all you can do. There's not anything you can say on stage to make people really like you. Like, I personally think sometimes less is more when you're talking in between songs. I'm not a fan of sort of rambling on stage. I think you go on stage, you put on a great show, and then you know, do you know what I mean, short and sweet and to the point. And if you can upstage the headliner, then people will remember that. But I mean, easier said than done. The headliner is usually the headliner for a good reason, but sometimes they're not. Sometimes the headliner's not that great, and that's always a blessing, I think. I'm a big fan of when you know the headliner is not going to put on a good show, because you know that people will be like, oh, damn, the band before, maybe they should have gone on for last. You know what I mean? So yeah, you just have to put on the best show possible, and I don't think there's anything more you can do, really. Like, there's nothing you can say. You just got to perform at your best and be confident.
Yeah, definitely. So as well, like after that, after you've played your best show ever, what do you often have a merch stand? Do you go and kind of hang out at the merch stand, meet people? Do you think that's an important part of it as well?
Yeah, no, that's very true. Merch is very important, I think, to just mingle. I love being at the merch stand for the sake of socializing. You know, after the show, I'll pack up as quickly as I can, all sweaty, like trying to wrap up my cables, or the other bands like tell me to get off. And I'm running over to the merch stand as quick as possible to try just see if there's anyone there. Do you know what I mean? Because you got to be there as quick as possible, because people get bored quick. If you're taking like 15 minutes to get off stage and there's someone who's just seen you, they want to see if they can buy a t-shirt, and you're pissing about, you might lose a customer. And even if it's just a customer, just someone to talk to and say thanks for coming to the show. Do you know what I mean? And I love that. I think it's really nice to get to talk to people, and I think people really appreciate that. People coming to the gig will love to see you at your own merch table. They don't like to see someone doing it for you. I mean, not to say that there's anything wrong with that. Obviously, that's a very common thing to get friends to come along and help. But I think people like to talk to the band, you know. And so if you go over to the merch stand and just shake people's hands and say thanks for coming, people will appreciate that.
Yeah, I think that's really important as well. So going back to kind of what we were talking about earlier with the co-writing with Tim Armstrong, is there anything you found? Obviously before then you were just writing with the other band members and kind of writing on your own, and hadn't really done any like professional co-writing sessions before. Is there anything you can any advice about that? Anything that was really different? Kind of share a bit about that experience, and what advice? Because I think there's definitely people listening that will want to co-write professionally and maybe haven't done that before.
Yeah, that was actually a really weird experience for me, that I wasn't ready for, to be honest. I must admit I wasn't prepared to learn how to write with a producer and to work with a producer, because a little fun fact about that experience was that me and Tim, our producer, kind of had a little bit of a falling out on the first day or the second day, I think it was. So we were showing him one of our songs, and we asked him we're not really happy with this chorus, can you think of another chorus? Maybe we try and mix it up. And he played us this chorus. We thought, yeah, okay, that's all right, we'll give that a go. We tracked it all, full band tracked this new song with a new chorus, and listening back, I just wasn't really happy with it. I was like, I'm not really sure this is working. Like, maybe let's just sleep on it and come back to it tomorrow. And because Tim had asked me, all right, Jack, let's get you to track these guitars with this chorus. And I responded with that, like, maybe let's sleep on it. And he was like, oh, what, are you the producer now? And I was like, no, it's not what I mean, man, shit. And he didn't really take that very well. But we talked it out, and we quickly came to the next. That night ended a bit weird, and then the next day we talked about it and we got over it and everything was fine. But I kind of forgot that we are working with a producer now, and it's not all down to, not every decision is down to us. Like, the final decision always is, but he was suggesting that we at least try this chorus, not necessarily that we have to keep it. And I got that. I was like, okay, yeah, you should at least try every idea. No idea is a bad idea. Because I think that's the thing, is when you're working with other people, it's quite easy to write off other people's ideas because it's not how you imagined it. You think, oh, this is different to what I had in mind, so I don't know if I'm feeling it. But I think it's really important to just try everything, because just because you try something doesn't mean it's going to make the last song. You have to you have to try everyone's perspective, because everyone's got different views, and sometimes you're wrong is the reality. But in that case, I wasn't wrong. We didn't even use that song, so it was fine. But the point is that we tried it, and it was all right, but it wasn't good enough. So I think it's very important to remember to, even if it might not seem like the best idea at the time, give it a go. Don't just write off people's ideas because it doesn't feel like how it is in your head. Try everything at least once.
Yeah, I think that's interesting though, because like obviously you guys are the artists and it's your album, but that you're working with someone who has like had a very, very successful songwriting career, and obviously as you're like, he's working as your producer. So how do you balance that with like what you guys want and what he says is best? Like obviously I understand you have ideas about stuff, and you probably would try out what he says as well, but yeah, I don't know, I feel like how do you get that kind of the right kind of balance there and the right kind of dynamic between you guys and the producer?
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting, is because you do have disagreements over what you think is best, but we were lucky to have that. Tim, as much as he's firm when he's producing, when it comes down to making the final decisions of what songs you want to use, he said to us, you guys are the band members, you decide what goes on this album, not me. He was just there to try to get us the best sound possible, to try to bring the best out in us, and give us a different perspective. But at the end of the day, we knew that we had every final decision. He wasn't going to make us put out a song that we didn't fancy. Do you know what I mean? It was actually really nice sort of atmosphere in the studio. I think there was a lot of respect between each other. We all knew each other's place. While we were recording, it was kind of like he was the fourth member of the band. It was all democratic. There wasn't like any overruling, like us saying, no, Tim, you're not a member, you can, or like he was saying, oh yeah, I'm the producer, you have to do this. Obviously that was it, what I said about the chorus thing, but that wasn't like him saying we're going to use this chorus. That was him saying we should try this chorus. Do you know what I mean? Like, so his idea was like very open to trying everything, and but he was always happy to take our final decision, which was, we respected that quite a lot, which was nice.
Yeah, I don't know if you wanted to talk, like share a bit about, you don't have to, but how the kind of like, in terms of the money side of things, like how that split would work between the artist and the producer, like obviously in like a very professional setting where, he is like co-writing some of the songs as well. How do you work that out?
Yeah, so we did it. We thought the fairest way to do it, the most democratic way, is just an equal split. We didn't want to get into the funny business of saying like, oh yeah, well, he wrote this lyric and then I wrote that chord sequence. Like, we just thought whoever helped with this song gets an equal split. So when there was four of us, me, Sid, Jacob of the band, and Tim, we would split it 25% each. If it was just me, Sid, and Jacob as a band, we always split it equally. Although saying that, it's not even that it gets split between us personally. It goes straight to our band account. We don't take personal money from the royalties. We just put it into our band account. But yeah, so it's always split equally between us. And then when Tim helps us with a song, he gets 25%. And in some cases, there were some songs where Jesse Michael, Tim's friend, he's of Operation Ivy. I think Leo probably knows him. I'm sure he knows them very well. He helped us with a couple as well. He was never there, but Tim had a lot of lyrics that him and Jesse had been writing. So there was some songs where it was 20% each between five of us. I mean, because we talked to Tim on the phone about this. We thought like, what's the best way to do it? And we both agreed. I think that's just nice and fair. Like, there's no confusion in that way, and we were happy to do it that way. I think that's our preferred way to split.
Yeah, definitely. So as a whole, like, would you recommend co-writing then to kind of, do you feel it helped develop you as musicians or as writers? Would you kind of recommend it for other people?
Massively. It's quite literally changed us as a band, I think, working with Tim for those couple of weeks, for multiple reasons. During that time, not only did we learn a lot about songwriting, but he also taught us a lot about our vocal performance and how our vocals have developed since, because we're quite a shouty band, not a lot of melody, so it kind of helped us become, I don't know, shouty in a good way. I think is, I don't know, we just we developed quite a lot because of that. But yeah, songwriting in general, co-songwriting, I think is really good. It's really important to see how other people write, because it's so easy to get stuck in your own little loop of just writing the same stuff every other day. I do it all the time. I'm sitting at home during lockdown and I'll pick up the guitar and I kind of just write the same song a million times. Do you know what I mean? I think it's quite an easy thing to do. So me and Leo, we've been doing a lot of co-writing. We did a lot over lockdown, and that, I think that helped both of us quite a lot as well with learning each other's preference and like how we work. So I think it's a really important thing that a lot of people should try.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for that. At the end of the last question there, you kind of said a bit about the royalties go straight into your like band bank account. How do you how did you learn about like the finance side of things, and how did you work out what to do? Have you always kept the band money like within the band? How did you kind of pick up like what to do with that? Because I think it can be quite confusing for people starting out, if they're like, oh, we just made 50 quid on t-shirts, and then like we've just spent it at the bar or something. Like what did you do around that?
We went through that phase very much so. Like, yeah, we made that mistake many a time. Our worst one was probably when we got a really nice payout from Isle of Wight Festival. We played the Hip Shaker stage in like 2015, and it was a pretty small gig. Nothing really happened. It wasn't very eventful. We had a decent crowd, but we got a free ticket out of it, and we didn't think about it since. And then like 2 years later, we somehow got a massive payout from PRS. They sent us $2,000 for this gig we played, and we weren't expecting that at all. We didn't know we were going to get that, so we just were like, woo, $2,000! Like, we just split it equally, just sent 700 quid into each of our banks, and we were like, sweet, I'm going to buy a new telly, like. And that that was foolish, because we needed that money really badly, like, and we used to do that all the time. Whenever we'd make any money, we'd just be like, sweet, you can get this, you get this, and we'll go have a good time. But we quickly learned, well, not quickly actually, it took us a couple of years to figure that out, that we have to start saving. And now we haven't taken money from the band personally in, I think, years, to be honest, because we've got so many debts. We've got, it's a very expensive hobby. There's so many people that we owe money to, so we need to save every penny we have. So any gig money we gain, any merch money, it goes right into the account, and that is just to help us invest in future tours and future merch orders and everything. Like, it's important to have quite a big buffer in your bank, so you have money to invest into these tours, because we've had so many times where we've had no money and we've got a tour coming up, and we're like, right, we've got to buy flight tickets, we've got to hire a van, we've got to hire a driver, we've got to order a shitload of merch. Excuse my language, sorry. And tours are expensive. You have to invest so much money into that, and so I think it's really important to build up a bank first. Have maybe if an ideal amount would be at least $1,000, or if more, just to invest, because things like hiring a van really do break the bank. You don't realize until afterwards how expensive these things are, not to mention hiring backline. I mean, ideally you'd have your own, but a lot of the time you don't. So yeah, we learned how to not take the money. That helped a lot.
Yeah, definitely. Do you get any support from the label for that side of things, or do they just purely manage the distribution and the recording?
Yeah, no, they helped us with tour support as well. For our record deal, they also gave us $5,000 for tour support in America, and that basically paid for our van. The van roughly came to $5,000 over the entire tour, I think, so that perfectly paid for that. And we still barely broke even. But so yeah, they do help. And for our tour that got cancelled because of COVID, our European tour we were supposed to do with Social Distortion, that they were supposed to pay us on the off days. I think it was, they were going to help us with every time we had an off day on the tour, because there was a lot of gaps in this tour. If we couldn't find it, we'd obviously try to fill those gaps where we could and play gigs as much as we can. But in the event we can't, they'll give us a little bit of money to help pay for the van, etc. You know, little things like that. So they'll give us tour support money when we request it.
Okay, so just to like, I guess kind of just clarify a bit for everyone. So you're now on a subsidiary of Epitaph, which is Tim's label, Hellcat Records.
That's right.
Not on the original like small label anymore. So what's that like? Obviously Epitaph's still an independent label, but it's a pretty big one. So what's that like comparing the two being now being on kind of more of a proper like established label?
Yeah,
also just what does that kind of like, what does your deal involve with them, if you see what I mean? Like what is the record deal?
Yeah, so yeah, they're technically an independent label, but it's hard to see them as one now, really. They've branched out quite massively. Yeah, that was a really weird step for us because working with quite an unprofessional label, you could say, before, with our independent one in Germany, Contra Records, going to Epitaph was a huge step. And that it's weird, but it's been an amazing experience because they've been doing a lot to really help us out. Like the main thing for us is probably just the promo. You know, they've been able to absolutely promote us everywhere with all their social media. They have got a lot of contacts, obviously, a lot of ways to promote us in like magazines and all kinds of websites. But yeah, the deal itself was really good. I mean, it was a free album deal, so we've done one album, we've got 2 more to go, and we have to record the albums with Tim, so we have to go out there to do them with him. That's like part of the deal, which is fine by us, you know. I mean, what else? Like the difference between Contra Records and like the major labels?
I guess just like for you guys, like what does it mean for you being on such like an established label now, and like how important is that record deal for you guys?
Yeah, no, obviously it's hugely important, and it's been what has made us, given us this next step into making potentially this, you know, this fun project into an actual career. You know, they've actually given us this opportunity to potentially be able to do this, you know, for a lot longer. And you know, they support us financially with this record. You know, they fund the record, they give us tour support, which has been a massive help, because all of these years as well, we have been struggling financially because of this band. You know, it's never been a profitable thing, and it still isn't, but that helps massively. And obviously, yeah, it's just a huge honor to be on this label, because it's the biggest label we probably could get on playing the music that we play. You know, it's the biggest step for us to take. So now it's kind of, you know, the pressure's kind of on us now, I think, is to deliver what people expect to see on Hellcat. You have to deliver that high quality content. So, you know, the ball's in our court, and it's a lot of pressure, I must admit, but it's a good kind of pressure, you know.
Yeah, definitely. So do you have any kind of like last thoughts, anything we haven't covered, any kind of like top tips or advice either that you would or wouldn't do, and then we'll go over and see if anyone has any questions. So guys, if you have any questions now, whilst we're talking, put them in the chat now, and if you want to speak up, then you can as well. That's fine.
Yeah, I guess well, I could go over the another big mistake we made as a band is quite a good one, is that similarly with how I talked about Contra Records, how we sort of let them take advantage of us being quite young and naive. Similar thing happened when you know, we would hire a driver, and who became quite a bit of a control freak, and sort of wanted to kind of take control of the band, become the tour manager, and do everything for us. And again, we made a similar mistake where we kind of let this guy walk all over us, and we were like, yeah, you can do that, you can do this. It's less effort for us, which quickly became a problem, because he became a very strange guy that was like kind of manipulating us. And I think that's another sort of learning lesson for us, is like to make sure you know your worth. Coming back to that same thing, like don't ever let anyone take control of you as a band. Like a lot of people try, I think, jump on the bandwagon and think, oh yeah, this young band, I want to be part of that or something. Like, just remember, you guys, whoever's in the band, you are the most important people, most important members of the band, and you should have every decision. And like, remember that you're something that's worth writing home about. You're important.
definitely. So does anyone have any last kind of thoughts or any questions they want to ask? You can either put them in the chat or just take yourself off mute, that's fine.
You have another job alongside that supports you more financially in between tours? Yes, yeah, I do actually. So when I'm at home back on the Isle of Wight, like we are now, I work at a bar, just a local bar, and that is my main income. Actually, is my only income. The band doesn't financially support me at all, so that is what I do to make money while I'm home. Just work bar, which is quite a nice job.
Is that what do the other members of the band do that as well? Do you all have like day jobs as well?
Everyone but our drummer. I don't know what our drummer does. Jacob's a mysterious man. I literally
Maybe don't go into that.
Yeah, no, honestly, I couldn't tell you. Like, the kid's mysterious, so he's always just doing bits and bobs, but God knows what. But yeah, Sid, our other member, he works at Tesco. You know, it's just little day jobs that we do in the meantime to help us get by, so we can actually maybe have enough money to go away on tour.
Right. I was just going to add to that, Jack. Do you think that's like something that you see? Is that like a trend you're seeing at the moment with like maybe like people you know in bands? Do you think obviously there's like less money in music now? So do you think that's just kind of the way it's becoming? You need to have a side hustle, so to speak, for when you're not on the road and when you're not very actively either recording or touring with Grade 2?
Yeah, man, 100%. Like, I think it's so hard to make a living from music if you're just a touring band. You have to, you know, I think you have to hit like the 10-year mark of actively touring, or maybe like 10 years as a band is probably when you're going to start seeing success. I think, like, do you know what I mean? We've been doing it for 7, coming up to 8 years now. 8 years next month, actually. And you know, we still don't make profit. And I think a lot of bands are like that. Yeah, like you do. It's not a profitable thing until you start seeing real success, which is quite a shame, I think.
Do you think that's true even for somebody like Tim, who obviously you said, like, you know, it's part of your deal that he wants to be involved with all 3 records that you do with Epitaph? Do you think, you know, obviously he's not working in, you know, Walmart as a day job, but do you think it's even true to him? You know, he's trying to, you know, get work from your deal, you know?
Yeah, I think for someone like him, he's more doing it for the sake of, he enjoys it, and it's a fun challenge for him, more of a creative challenge. Do you know what I mean? I think financially he doesn't really have much interest, to be honest. He is, you know, kind of got his fingers in many pies, where I think he doesn't have to ever worry about money again, to be honest.
Do you think we kind of hear this term being thrown around a lot nowadays, like portfolio careers? So having, like being able to have, you know, people wanting to get into, you know, working in the music industry, especially we know as a music artist, there's not a lot of money in it. You know, you don't get big record deals anymore and things like that. And like one of the things we hear being thrown around a lot is portfolio careers. And, you know, a lot of people go into kind of co-writing with other people, producing with other people, like maybe doing some production music, like all these different things. And do you think that's something that like needs to be done and is really beneficial? I don't know if you guys like ever think about doing anything like besides the band.
Yeah, I think that is quite a crucial thing that a lot of people do, which we haven't done ourselves, actually, because we try to just focus purely on the band, nothing else. We haven't really considered branching out to anything else, because for us personally, we're kind of at a point where, you know, we're very close to breaking that point of maybe being able to make some money. So we don't want to avert our attention anywhere else, do you know what I mean? But whereas other people, I think that could be very important part of their careers, is working with other people, not necessarily being a touring band, because that's an extremely sort of risky way, I think, to make a career. I think in the music industry, there's lots of other ways you could benefit and, you know, make an actual career from it, whether it's production, sound engineer, you know, a session musician. There are a lot more, I think, reliable professions.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's really interesting. So does anyone have any last questions before we wrap up at all?
I just want to ask one more question. Like, do you have any advice on how to kind of make that transition from it just being friends supporting your music? You know, if you release a single and you might have your friends like sharing it and kind of supporting, do you have any advice on kind of growing your fan base of people that have purely just found you through your music? Because I feel like if you're not touring, or, you know, especially with COVID, you're not performing live, it's quite hard to find a new audience. So do you have like any other way of kind of branching out and finding new people?
Yeah, obviously with COVID at the moment, it's going to be really hard. It might be a case of sort of waiting for things to come back to normal, but we originally did ours literally by Facebook, was kind of how we got the contacts originally. We, you know, with our Facebook page, we reached out to a lot of people and messaged as many people as we knew, you know, promoters, other bands in the scene that we had heard of, other bands that we were just fans of, and we said, you know, we've got this band, check us out. So I think social media is a really powerful tool. At the time when we started, Facebook was a lot more popular than Instagram. Instagram wasn't really so big back then, but Instagram's now it's all about Instagram now. So I would probably, you know, making sure you've got a good social presence and try reach out to as many people as you can online. I think it's probably the best way to get started, but it is difficult.
Thank you.
Great. So unless anyone has any last questions, I think we're going to leave that there. And obviously, you know, it's been great to hear from you, Jack. It's been really interesting talking with you and sharing some information around that. And, you know, Jack obviously said he's been doing this for like 8 years now. Don't be disheartened by that. You know, he does really, really enjoy it. And like you said, they're going to the point now where, you know, he's going to be, you know, they're on the verge of kind of breaking through and being able to maybe do this more as their main source of income. So yeah, thanks everyone for watching. If you have any last questions or whatever, just put them in the chat now.
Thank you very much, Megan. Thanks for having me.
All right, see you later. Thank you.
No worries. Cheers.